In this lesson, we'll take a look at some of the different types of files that we can use in ZBrush. So here I've just got a blank canvas, and the tool palette has been docked over here onto the right-hand side tray. And so let's talk about how ZBrush deals with our models. So if you're working with a 3D model in ZBrush, you're going to refer to it as a Z tool or a tool. And we're going to be able to find and import and load up those tools over here in the tool palette. So let's take a look at the current tools. Here we have kind of the recently used tools. If we open up this button here, you can see that here's a section of 3D meshes that we can draw onto our canvas as tools, and also 2.5D brushes. So when we're working with 3D geometry, we're going to be concentrating on this area and also tools that we've loaded up ourselves. So if we, for instance, select the sphere, which we have selected, and we want to draw that onto the canvas, you can draw it out onto the canvas and you can see it there. If I don't do anything at this point and I just draw again, I'm going to draw another sphere onto the canvas. Okay, and you can see that we have depth here because you can see that penetration there. It's not as if it's drawing it sort of right on top of it. Okay, but if I try to move around, I can't do that because this is just part of the depth-based canvas or 2.5D canvas. So we can see the depth of the sphere, okay, but it's not really a 3D model that we can rotate around. If we change our tool and choose something different, so let's choose the gear, we can draw that onto our canvas, okay, but still we can't do anything with this. We can't move around. We can create illustrations with it. We can create images with it, but we can't really do anything else. If we go up to document, we could export this, as an image. Okay, so think of this as our sort of document. It's kind of a flat image, but it does have depth included with the pixels. So in order to clear this out, we would hit Control N to clear off the information. Okay, and now let's say we want to actually treat these as 3D models. So we'll go back and get our sphere. This time we'll draw it onto the canvas, and before doing anything else, we'll hit T, or we'll hit the Edit Object button. So hitting T takes us into edit mode, and now we can rotate around our object, turn on our polyframe, we can see the object, and now we're dealing with it as a 3D object. Okay. If we go out of edit mode, we're back to where we started with not being able to move this around. We can still go in and do some illustration. For instance, if we want to get our simple brush, we can come in here and start adding information here, and we'll look at painting a little bit more. We can come in here and you can see it's sort of like sculpting here. We can come in and start doing some painting here, but really we're just painting with depth. We're not working on a 3D model, and we can clear that off at any time by hitting Control N. Okay, now if we want to load up an external tool, we can go ahead and go to Load Tool, and we can navigate, in this case, to our project files if we want to load up an image, or a tool rather. And so I'll choose Lesson 03 Start. You can see that has the ZTL extension there. So go ahead and say open that up. Okay, so nothing is on the canvas currently because we didn't have anything drawn on there, but you can see that we have a new tool located here. It looks like just a vest. If we go down into the subtool subpalette, we can see that it actually consists of a number of different subtools, okay, that we can click on. So your tools don't have to be a single piece. They can consist of a number of different pieces. They're going to exist as a single Z tool, but you're going to have a number of subtools that are going to be underneath that. And so by clicking on that top, I can now click and drag this out, okay, and we'll go into edit mode. And let me just change the material here. Don't need to worry about that. Just want to change that. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. But you can see here now, instead of a sphere, I have a character that consists of a number of different subtools here. But it's being treated as a single Z tool that we can rotate around, and we can eventually do our sculpting on, things like that. Okay. Now if I click on here, you can see that that tool has now been added, so that if I were to go back and change to a sphere, you can see it changes the tool that I'm working with. I can now go back and click on another Z tool and work with that. So this is going to keep a running list of the Z tools that you've been working with. Now to save that out, you want to save it as a Z tool. You can save as to save that out. Now when you're looking at this import and export, those are going to allow you to import different types of files. So in this case, we can import an OBJ or an MA or GoZ. So a Maya ASCII file or an OBJ file. So if we're working with geometry from another application, which we'll talk about again a little bit later, we're going to be importing and exporting. Working with Z tools, we're going to be loading and saving those. Okay. So we've got the Z tools as our 3D models and also our 2.5D depth brushes that we can work with. We also have the document. So for instance, if I have this model out here and I'm moving around it, if I save the document here, I'm not saving the Z tool. I'm just saving the ZBrush document, so the image that we see with depth. And so you can do that here. You can open up, save as, new documents. You can import images and export images as well, external images that aren't ZBrush documents. That's going to be located over here under document. You can also change the document settings here. You can change the background. There's a gradient back here that you can change. You can change the color. You can change the size of the document. Keep in mind, if you change the size of the document with the Z tool there, you're going to have to go ahead and clear out your canvas and redraw the Z tool onto the canvas. But that's what you can do here in the document palette. Change those settings and so forth for your viewing. Okay, but it's not going to really change the Z tool. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to save the document and think that you've saved the Z tool, but then you've lost all of your work. So just definitely keep that in mind. Now we also have the ability to go in here and open and save as projects. Now projects are going to save a lot more than a document or a Z tool. You're going to have the document as well as the Z tool, and it's kind of going to open up ZBrush as you've left it. So it's going to take a lot more memory to do that, but you do have that ability to come in here and you have some individual items for the tools, timelines, spotlight, so forth to be able to work with. But you can save your project here and open up projects too. Okay, if you want to kind of keep everything within one file, you can do it that way. Okay, so that is kind of how ZBrush works with models. There's Z tools, and you can find them in the tool palette. You can load up new Z tools. We have the project files there if you want to try those. And also, the Z tools don't have to be single objects. They can actually be made up of a number of different objects. And if we open up our subtool palette, our subtool palette, we can see all of those different pieces that make up this individual Z tool. Okay. All right, so that's how ZBrush deals with models. So the next thing that we want to talk about is actually subdividing meshes. This is going to be a strength and kind of one of the main features of ZBrush is our ability to subdivide our meshes to make really high resolution meshes that we can start really doing some sculpting and creating some high resolution detail on those. And so we'll take a look in the next lesson about kind of how that works.